I am referring to the sensibility of an artist who instinctively reaches for what makes a painting a great painting. At the time, a quiet revolution was just starting to take hold in the world of Renaissance art, especially in the Bottega of Verrocchio, one that would be based upon a new kind of revelation. This revolution was not the sort achieved through faith, which is what the church wanted its paintings to convey, nor would it be based upon the fixed truths rulers expected artists to use their talents to reinforce, that each of us must know our place in the larger scheme of things, deferring to the supposedly inherent nobility of those above us. Rather, this revolution in art was founded on the notion that a new and different kind of truth was waiting to be identified by our senses and made sense of by our minds. The truth that came from careful observation. Just how this revolution would lead Leonardo to a new kind of art, one that would move viewers much more deeply, and one that speaks to us today in a way that most Renaissance painting does not, is the story this book tells. Crucial to that story, however, is the unraveling of a myth propagated, as my book will explain, by a renowned authority in the decades after his death. I am referring to the notion of Leonardo as the iconic representative of two very different forms of genius. Leonardo, it is commonly believed, is the artist who painted masterpieces such as the Ginevra de' Benci, the Mona Lisa, and the Last Supper, and drew the iconic Vitruvian Man, and then underwent a metamorphosis of sorts. Somewhere in his late 30s and early 40s, there is the emergence of a second Leonardo, the one who imagined inventions that would not come to exist until centuries later, from the parachute to the flying machine. The one who became fascinated by science and philosophy. The artist and the scientist, each exceptional in his own way, but representing different parts of the same man. The traditional characterization of this dual Leonardo is that the natural philosopher in him decided to work out scientifically what the artist had somehow vaguely intuited decades earlier. Many of us who inadvertently helped perpetuate this dual genius thesis had good reason to do so. Scholars relied, after all, on documents Leonardo himself left us, in particular his folios or notebooks. Many of the folios are dated, and based on those dates, with the exception of a few outliers, which were somehow ignored, it seemed that the vast majority of his shadow drawings, for instance, were done when Leonardo was well into his late 30s or early 40s. In other words, long after he knew how to paint, and contemporaneous with his shift toward his philosophical investigation of nature. Science was called natural philosophy back then. But do the dates written on the folios indicate what we have long assumed they indicate? Let me explain. It always surprises my students when I tell them that Leonardo was one of the least prolific painters of his time. Over a period of about 4 decades, he left us only between 12 and 15 paintings. The number changes depending on the attribution of a handful of controversial works. And a number of these he never fully completed, including, it might surprise many to learn, the Mona Lisa. If he was not busy painting, then how did Leonardo spend most of his time? He spent it writing. Leonardo was an inveterate note-taker. He got into the habit of never going out without a little notebook, just in case something caught his eye. When it did, it could be how a flock of birds seemed to hang in midair, or how water moved through a canal, or something as simple as a cat playing in the street. He would take out his notebook and write about or sketch what he had seen, or he would make a note to himself to pursue a question he could not resolve on the spot. A staggering 4,100 or so pages of sketches and notes, many supplemented with technical drawings in the style of the shadow drawings, have come down to us. But most scholars believe that what has survived represents no more than half of what Leonardo likely produced, which would mean he wrote around 8,000 pages. A more liberal estimate would place the number at 16,000. No other artist from the Renaissance left a written record of this size behind. And here's the important point. There eventually came a time, when exactly we do not know, but certainly by 1490, when Leonardo believed that by organizing and expanding the notes and drawings he had made over the years, he could eventually produce a book with the aim of teaching artists that painting is philosophy. He was aware that few painters make a profession of writing since their life is too short for its cultivation, and that, in general, they have not described and codified their art as science. Determined to do something about this, he started to take notes on what we would now call scrap paper, and in Leonardo's time, scrap paper would quickly succumb to the elements. To preserve the most important of his writings and drawings, he copied each into a new...
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.